Okay, so we made the long trip here to Wisconsin. This is gonna be in North Prairie to be exact. Ryan's Diesel Service, Kodiak truck. Very exciting. You guys have been asking for this video for a very long time. It's just too extreme, right, Mark? I mean, we're using the clutches that were, what, a 750 horse build in that trans last time you did it?
Right, we were taking a few chances, mostly with the C2s. But I wanted to get a good look at everything else again, and through my scratching in my head here, I came up with a different game plan for different clutches and clearances and everything else. And we're going to give this a valiant effort, and I'm sure we'll have success with this. And again, some guys are like, well, it's only 300 horsepower difference. Well, 300 horsepower can break a lot more parts than what you expect, an extra 300 horse. So rather than say, oh, let's just run it and
see what happens,
aka Josh. No, we're not doing that.
No, Earl.
Earl.
Yeah.
Earl. We're going to hang Earl out by his toes. We're gonna make sure that we threw everything at it correctly the best we can the first time around.
So this is my very first time building a truck with that much horsepower, and of course we got to put some stronger stuff in there. That's what I'm saying. So the guys at Guerin Transmissions came in clutch, literally clutch. They actually sent us some better clutches, and like I said, I have the expert here, Kodiak truck, Mark Bendler himself, owner operator. This man knows his stuff. He's been doing this for over what, 35 plus years. I'd imagine. Not trying to call you old.
I'm really feeling old.
Yeah, I'm not trying to call you old. And this is his son, Ryan, the owner of Ryan's Diesel Service, where they manufacture turbos. They do diesel work, as you guys can see. Great, hardworking American companies. I got to give them a huge, huge shout out. Definitely support these guys if you're interested, especially in these transfer cases. These things are beautiful. We'll talk more about that in another video, guys. Let's get to this. We're going to go ahead and tear down that transmission.
So we got quite a bit to talk about here today. Obviously, you see two different sets of clutches on the table here, and a flex plate. So I'm pretty sure when we built your trans for the Wife Max, we did use the LML piston build. With that said, the C3, C4 clutches I would not have a whole lot of concerns about. I'd have more concerns about the C2s. Right here we have the Alto clutches that are going to go in the C2s now. We have a combination of BADDEST clutches here. We also have a combination of some black Colines that are going to be designed to take a little bit more heat than the standard steels. The downside of the Colines is they can hurt the transmission case over an extended period of time because they're so hard. It's such a hard material. Some of you guys that watched a transmission video we did on your trans, Josh, when you first came here that time with the red truck, the LBZ, and off camera I said, hey, we need to look at this drum and it could be destroyed, knowing what we had already seen in that transmission. And sure enough, I don't want to be that guy, but I called it and we knocked that drum down and that drum was hurt. Mm-hmm. Luckily we had those drums here to make that thing 100% and whatever. Those choline steels are hard material, and they're hard on the parts that they're rubbing up against. So with that said, when you get to 1,000 horsepower transmissions, guys that are drag racing or more, you're probably realistically tearing this truck down or this transmission down every year after race season to go through it, to freshen it up, to make sure everything's good again, so that when you are competing or you're doing whatever you're doing with that vehicle, you're throwing 100% A game at it. So we've got a great selection of stuff here. This is all going to go in the Wife Max transmission. You can see everything we got here. Again, combination of Alto, BADDEST stuff. Guerin hooked us up with this. Again, I can't say enough good things about them guys. I consider it a privilege every time I'm able to talk to Dave on the phone. The man is an absolute genius.
And Dave is the owner.
Dave is the owner. Dave Guerin is the owner. Dave Anderson might be a guy you talk to on the phone when you call in to order parts.
Dave's a great guy. Dave Anderson, we've dealt with him a lot too in the past. Awesome guy, very knowledgeable with this stuff as well too.
So when you guys are building the transmissions, that's mainly the parts that you guys use are from them?
Absolutely, everything's from them. Yeah, I wouldn't go anywhere else. You know, a couple guys made comments in the videos that I'm the professor. I'm not the professor.
You're the professor.
Dave Guerin's the professor. He's the professor. On this side of the table, what you guys are looking at is another really cool deal. And again, I have to say, I feel completely privileged to be able to bring this to you. Guerin is coming out with their own clutches. They're having a manufacturer make them and design them and everything else. He's got 4 sets of these experimental clutches, and he gave us one of them to build a transmission and test in our shop in a truck. So the Beard, as you guys know, is our guinea pig. we're building a trans for his truck, and he's going to take it out and basically try to abuse it.
Why do they call you the Beard?
Because I like to shave.
He's our test dummy on a lot of this stuff, and he also sled pulls at county fairs and stuff like that, and he puts his truck to the ringer, which, by the way, you guys will see a future video of his truck. They just installed a 9-blade RDS turbo. It's pretty wicked, so I think you guys should stay tuned for that one. But yeah, he's going to be our test dummy. We're going to see if we can break these parts, but stay tuned for that. Make sure you guys subscribe if this is your very first time, because you know I'm going to make a video on that one. How many Duramaxes do you have right now?
5.
Okay. Are you married?
No.
Okay. Single ladies.
That's not going to help anything.
It's like when you're camping in Yosemite, you don't leave food out on the table. You never know what's going to come around.
into the campsite?
Yeah, exactly.
All right, so what do we talk? Okay, so we have 2 sets of clutches. One set's going to be for the Wife Max, the 04 LB7 Duramax, and then we have another set. And is this for an Allison 6-speed? Because I think no, he has an LB7 as well.
He's got an LB7 as well.
So identical vehicles,
Yeah.
basically. Okay.
So through conversation with Dave on the phone, the company that is manufacturing the clutches for them, he explained to me their testing process, and this will blow your mind. They make clutches for off-road heavy-duty equipment, and I'm not at liberty to say who the company is that they make them for. He indicated to me what he basically knew, and we're going to keep that in the vault. But their testing process to test these clutches are, they use a hellacious diesel engine. I can't say the name of the brand. They run it wide open throttle and reverse to drive for 2,000 cycles. If it passes 2,000 cycles without failing the clutch or heat, it's good to go. These clutches right now that they've designed and the material that's on them have run 8,000 cycles.
So back and forth, basically. Back and forth, back and forth.
I'd love to see this.
I
honestly
imagine.
would. I'd love to see this testing. I'd love to be there to see it going on, because he said legitimately they're running this motor at wide open throttle and they're shifting this through the valve body, reverse to drive, to see how bad they can destroy the clutches. And obviously that makes a ton of heat. A ton of heat. And that's the worst thing on a transmission, is obviously heat. So we're going to put a trans together. The Beard's going to be our guinea pig, as we said, and he gave us some clearances to work with. We're going to give this a try. We're going to put the trans in the truck. We're going to run it roughly 6 weeks and pull the trans back out, knock it back down, inspect clutches, and report back to Dave on everything. But this is pretty exciting stuff, and it's great for Garen. These guys, they've got it together. Their knowledge, their accuracy with everything we get from them is incredible. You guys also see a flex plate laying on the table here. This flex plate I just measured is roughly 75 thousandths thicker than a stock one.
And when he's talking about the flex plate, this is the stock flex plate. This is just basically a plate that you put right over, or it's bolted right down to the flywheel. So this is your stock plate. He's talking about the, I guess, the thickness of the stock one versus the billet one. Is that correct?
Correct. You guys might be able to see it on camera here, the difference in the thickness, but this is almost half again as thick.
Yeah.
So
these are pretty problematic. These are going to crack. Ryan, I'm sure you've seen this come to the shop before when you guys are pulling transmissions.
Absolutely. Yep, we've had that. We've also just had guys that have driven down the road and they think that their motor blew up or whatever the case may be that way, because what will happen a lot of times is where your bolts are coming through here, they'll crack, and as it cracks, it'll keep on coming down through, or it'll crack this way and they just spiders out, and eventually a chunk of it will break off. That chunk then will be rattling around down actually in the bell housing, and it sounds absolutely horrible. So we've seen that before as well too. I know recently, what was that, probably a couple months back, we had one that came through that it hadn't gone through all the way through yet. He was getting a built trans, and like I say, his was cracked coming up through here. So definitely something to be mindful of when if you're pulling a trans out, to always look at that. Like our guys here, they're just trained and they know that when the trans is out, the hot flush is on it, and they're doing their inspection, to look at that very closely, because that's the time to do it while the trans is out, not having to pull it all back out again.
any built component, no matter who builds it, is only as good as the rest of the parts that it's getting hooked to. So if you don't have good parts on the motor, you don't have good parts on the transfer case, drive shafts, differentials, whatever, there's always a weak link somewhere. If you don't factor it in, you better factor it in, or you're going to find your weak link real quick.
But guys, just so you know, this is going in the Wife Max. This is going in the Beard's pull truck. We're going to inspect that later on after pull season, see how those clutches can handle the power. Because like you said, that big name company that's doing it thousands of times forward and backwards. That's pretty impressive. So I'm really excited to see how that holds up. But more importantly, let's focus on what's going on with the WifeMax. These Garin parts are really going to complement this transmission. Is there really anything else we need to hit on? I mean, we have all the clutch packs we need. You said the LML pistons are here, the C1 through C5. Is that correct?
Correct. Yeah.
So we're fully outfitted now.
Yep. Yep. Exactly.
Awesome.
So we should be good. We should be good to go with everything we have.
All right. So the exciting part, after we just talked about the clutches, we're gonna go ahead and tear this trans down and finally get it updated with some much needed clutches. You ready for this, Mark?
Yeah, you bet.
All right, let's get it.
We don't need to rebuild the whole transmission. We're going to go in, we're going to change a few things up, mainly all the clutch packs. And I honestly can't remember if this was an LML piston build or not.
We're gonna find out once we crack it open though.
Right, and it will be an LML piston build when this is all said and done. We got a combination of the clutches that you guys seen in the beginning of the video with the BADDEST and Alto clutches. We're gonna look everything over in great detail. Obviously it's gonna get all new gaskets and O-rings and seals and whatnot. And we're gonna get after this thing and make it happen, and it'll be fine when it's done. It's just one of them deals where when you start up in your horsepower, you got to think about the rest of the components that are behind it, because they're the ones taking that horsepower. So if you don't update them, you could have catastrophic failure at a certain component. We did the billet, we did input, intermediate, C2 clutch hub, and output. So we got all those billet pieces in there. We've built some transmissions that are 1,000, 1,200 horsepower stuff.
It's definitely a learning curve.
Them. Yeah. I mean, they get very expensive because of the billet. That's not a cheap date by any means. You roughly got somewhere around almost $3,000 worth of billet just in those shafts in that hub. So it can add up quite fast, but if you want to play, you got to pay.
You probably know how many bolts offhand off the top of this with your memory.
Yeah, I kind of take them apart in a certain order because I keep certain bolts together in certain places and whatnot. And obviously in the middle, all down through the middle, anything on the inboard side's got all O-rings on it for sealing. That's those green O-rings you see. Which when we tear one of these down, no matter what, we always replace every seal possible up in here. If you don't, and you got to take it back apart at a later time because of a leak, you have to pull the whole trans back out again, and it's just not worth it over a few 10 little O-rings.
What do some guys see when you pull these transmissions apart? Is there anything kind of backwards that they do?
Yeah, I've seen some kind of ugly things over the years of playing with these. For the most part, there's a lot of good builders out there, but then there's some that you tear apart and kind of shake your head. And we had one actually just as of recent in a 15 Denali. And it was a built trans. It was built by another shop. I'm not going to say who. And he was having issues with it. And he decided he no matter what, even though it was a built trans, he wanted ours. So we tore into it. And the C3, C4 clutch clearances were off. Not just by 10, 15 thousandths. They were off by 60 thousandths,
wow.
Which is huge. Which will cause for erratic shifting and some of the other stuff he had going on. So we went in and cleaned everything up and made it right. And did it our way.
Well, it probably beat up some of that hub, I'd imagine, in the inside of that trans, right?
These were in the back case right
okay.
out of the gate, so C4s are all the way in the back. That applies your second gear. So when it came out of first gear and shifted to second,
played hard.
Yeah, well, yeah, and it had a potential to fail and slip, which the clutches did get hot. Once we got it apart, you could see where the clutches did get hot, and if that shift can't apply fast enough and timed correctly, you'll slip clutches.
I'd imagine that guy spent a cool $6,000 to get that thing built, and
just a touch more, but pretty close. But yeah, we got it resolved for him.
well, the previous time he had it built,
Yeah.
and then now he's going in on it again because all the fancy parts, but not put together correctly.
Correct. Yep. So as you can see, these are the clutches, our C2 clutches, which are Eagle Reds. Those are from way back in the day. Yet, the abuse you've put on this transmission, and you've abused it, obviously, there is absolutely zero heat and them clutches basically have no heat put to them. So for all the naysayers that say, well, you know, the Eagle Reds from back in the day that Alpha made, they're not a good clutch. They are if you apply them right,
Yeah,
and they are if your clearances are
that
right.
was 4 hooks, a sled, or dirt drag, and like 3 pulls on the dyno.
Yeah.
And that's a lot of abuse.
Plus all the street driving and everything else. you
Street
did with
driving, and then of course breaking the output shaft.
it. Yeah,
And it's, yeah, it wasn't even, you could reuse those over.
absolutely. Might be a good candidate for the old shop truck with 400,000 miles on one of these
That's
days.
the old nag.
The old nag.
Last time you built this trans and you checked clearance, is it go off a little bit, or is it usually the same every time?
I mean, you'll have minimal wear in the clutches, but you shouldn't have excessive wear, obviously, because if you do, that's going to change the clearance on it. So yeah, no, you'll see some, but I mean, we'll look at these here close too. I mean, these things are beautiful. We're not seeing any heat in these at all. Now these are a high metallic clutch. So with that said, when they do wear, that is small metal particles going through the transmission. So in this case, the best way to kind of dictate what you got going on is look at your magnet. See if you got any debris on the magnet. It's really got very minimal debris on that magnet, and most of that's just from break-in. So again, this trans is in good shape so far. It is, and I mean, I don't want to sit here beating the dog that, yeah, old Josh was out beating the snot out of this thing, but
Yeah,
when you drove it, you didn't drive it all too easy.
No, I had
You know?
7 neutrals when I was done with the truck.
We did have an LML piston build.
Oh, nice. Some of you guys that don't know what a piston is inside of a trans, it's that thing right there.
This is it right here, and that's the good sound you want to hear, because you know that baby was sealed good when you hear him pull out like that.
You made a little scream when you pulled it out.
Yep. Clutch has got a couple hot spots on these, because they do catch
Catch a lot of heat.
a lot of abuse.
Yeah, I do see the
But,
hot spots.
Yeah.
You want to point those out?
Yeah, you can
camera?
just see them on camera. Nothing horrible. So when we put this trans back together, obviously we showed you the clutches that are going to go in there, and some of the steels we're now going to use are going to be Colleen's in the C3, C4 setup to handle more heat, because more power can translate into more heat. So we're going to use those and go away from that particular setup.
And have
Nothing wrong with that setup. We run that all the time. So.
And this shouldn't be. We shouldn't have a problem with what we're trying to do. Dyno,
No, absolutely not.
pulling sleds.
The heat you see on these, the little bit that's there, obviously it didn't slip because an Allison trans is sensitive enough to throw a code for it, for slippage. So you'll see some hot spots on these.
Oh, and have you seen these planetaries blow up before in your day?
I've never had a trans in here yet with a blown up planetary. I have seen where our $8 to $20 Torrington bearing, depending upon which one it is, come unglued and get washed through the planetary, and that's a bad day.
Oh boy.
Now you got carnage.
It's kind of like a wrecking ball at that point, yeah?
Absolutely. Yeah, it'll tear everything up. So you'll end up dumping the planetaries and everything.
Yikes.
We'll take this apart, wash this, we'll check the end play on these planetaries, we'll look at them close, make sure we don't see anything going on. But all the bearings were new. What did you say, 8,000 miles ago we did this,
Yeah.
roughly? Okay, yeah. So, I mean, we have no need to replace bearings or anything like that. Unless we see something that doesn't look right, but so far everything looks mint.
How's that parking pole?
Why?
You still in good shape?
Yeah.
Okay.
Slamming in park lights rolling or what?
Yeah, well, remember when I had my wife try to put it in park when the
Oh, when the...
it was making that loud grrr.
Yeah.
Won't go nowhere.
What was that?
So yeah, that was just banging up against
I
it.
may or may have not have done that myself, actually. I learned the hard way.
So these apply in second gear.
How are they looking?
Same as the other ones, just a couple minimal hot spots, but other than that, they all look good. Looking at these clutches, I do believe we use BADDEST on these, which is going to be the same thing we're going back to, same idea, just a little different clutch. All right, guys, so I've taken the clutches as of right now, and I've put them in the C1, C2 clutch drum, checked all the clearances. We're spot on with everything. We're going to go ahead and soak the clutches and then assemble the C1, C2 clutch drum, and then we'll come over to the transmission. We already got our apply piston and return spring assembly down in there. We'll drop the C3 clutches in there, check clearance on them. We can get the front half of the trans back together.
So we are completely done with the transmission build, and I just want to extend my huge thank you to Kodiak Truck. Mark, thank you so much for all of your support, as well as Garen. I drove all the way to Wisconsin, and I know I'm in good hands. I'm so glad this was done and we're good to go.
Yeah, this was actually a fast, easy job. I mean, really all we did is reclutch the thing, check a few things, up the line pressure, and away we go. Wash a few parts. It wasn't like a total teardown rebuild, anything like that. So it really wasn't as time consuming as one would think. So should be good to go. Get her back together.
Absolutely. And I love the color. It's going to look really good on that black frame. I think overall, it's not really about the looks, guys, but you know, think about it. With all these clean parts and you know, new paint and all that, it's just really going to tie things together. It's kind of like the cherry on top, as we say. So just like all the other builds that we've done here in the shop, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Attention to detail. It's number one thing.
And I know you kept saying, don't rush it.
Don't rush it.
It's hard not to sometimes.
Don't rush it. Do it right the first time.
But I'm going to go ahead and make my way across the pond back to Michigan. We're going to go ahead and get back to the garage, but I'm going to go ahead and close this video out right now. Thank you guys so much for watching. I appreciate your support as always. We'll see you on the next video.
Stay tuned.